Welcome, everybody. My name is Tyler Price. I am the sales manager here at DWS, supporting our customers leveraging our test automation tool, Dimension SwifTest. We're going to spend some time today going over how to ease the burden of your Oracle Fusion Cloud updates with automated testing. I see some folks continuing to trickle in, so I think I'm going to give it another minute or two before we get started. But yeah, we will be getting underway here just under a minute or so. So I think we're going to try and get started, as I saw a number of people kind of join us here in the last minute. So again, to introduce myself, my name is Tyler Price. I am one of the sales managers here at DWS, supporting our customers leveraging Dimension SwifTest. I am joined this afternoon by my colleague and teammate, Dennis Tishenko. He is our technical project manager. And he's actually going to be putting on a bit of a demonstration where we review our test automation tool, Dimension SwifTest. We'll be doing that a bit later, later in the session. But before that, I do want to welcome all of the OA-TUG members that are joining us this afternoon. Always a pleasure. Yeah, just want to thank everybody for taking the time, and also I will say this at the end, but any questions that you might have, any thoughts on the presentation, on the subject matters, feel free to reach out to us afterwards. I do have my email address in one of the later slides, so feel free to reach out. We're always happy to talk about test automation and Oracle applications. So to get started, I just want to share a little bit about DWS. So DWS was founded in 1998, so we've been going strong for over 24 years. For the vast majority of those years, we've been an Oracle Gold partner, working closely with the JD Edwards community, as well as the Oracle Fusion Cloud apps. So if you're not familiar with what we do, DWS is a systems integrator and a software vendor. As I mentioned, we work really closely with the Oracle Fusion apps, Oracle Cloud apps community, as well as JD Edwards. We offer, test automation software that support those customer bases, as well as both development and technical services for our JD Edwards customers. DWS, we're not a huge company, but we do have customers throughout the world. So we have very much of a global customer base and a global perspective when it comes to how to support our customers and our partners. And then as an organization internally, we also have staff in over 10 countries. So again, very much of a global perspective here at DWS. So as we move forward, just want to take a quick look at the agenda. What you're seeing now, we're hoping to really give the folks that are joining us your money's worth. So we're aggressively going to attack a few different topics. we are scheduled for about an hour here, so I think we'll have enough time to review the slides of what we want to talk about, and we'll also have about 20 to 25 minutes towards the end where we're actually going to show you a demonstration of our test automation software, Dimension SwifTest. So, we already reviewed who we are at DWS. The other items that we really want to pay attention to today and what we'll be focusing on is, the functional testing opportunity for organizations specific to Oracle customers. Test the testing challenges that you face with quarterly updates and the frequency of those updates. We're going to look at the power of test automation and what it can deliver you and your team. And then ultimately we're gonna have a demo at the end, and we'll have some time at the end of it for questions and answers. So anything that pops up throughout the conversation, please note it, and we will be happy to discuss it at the end of the session. So let's get started. So when we look at the functional testing opportunity, anecdotally and based off conversations that we have on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, is it does require a lot of attention, because when we speak with different leaders of IT and leaders of departments that are supporting business applications, what we hear is really anywhere from 25% to 65% of the total time and effort attributed to any packaged software implementation, upgrade or change event, is really spent on testing. So originally when we heard that, that's obviously quite a significant number. But then when we did, do a bit more research, and the World Quality Report that Capgemini produces every year is a report that we really pay close attention to. But in last year's edition, after asking thousands of IT leaders, the respondents actually said that more than a third, and I think it was 35% of their overall IT budget was actually allocated to testing and QA. So, again, it's a very significant number, but I think it does paint a picture of, the attention and the investment that organizations are putting into their testing process and the teams responsible for doing that work. So, to take that a step further, why exactly are folks, investing so much and spending so much time to run the proper tests to ensure that their systems are working? It's because it's absolutely crucial to any business or organization. With that said, it's not easy, and it certainly is seen as a huge challenge. So why is that? Functional and regression testing are really seen as very time-consuming. Actually, running that process and running that activity in a project is seen as very difficult. I would say, in speaking with organizations, many times it does require specialist resources that they're either having to allocate from within their organization or bringing in special resources. It does slow the adoption of the technology among the users, and with everything combined, the resources, the time, it's a very expensive proposition, as some of the numbers that we saw on that last slide does say. And another surprising statistic for us in actually the same World Quality Report was less than half of the organizations that were polled, really only 45% of them believe that they have the right testing or strategy and process in place. So as much as organizations are investing in testing and ensuring their tools and their applications are working appropriately, less than half of the people responsible for that are actually happy with the process and methods that they have in place. So, where does that bring us? So when we think, more specifically about the Oracle Cloud App community, it's moving away from, an on-premise customer where you would have an update or an upgrade, once every 2, 3, or 5 years. What we're dealing with is something that's much more frequent. It's always changing. For an Oracle customer, their updates are happening on a quarterly basis. So it's definitely a different focus and a different attention that is required to manage your applications. The other is, you're in control for the most part. And we'll talk about this a little bit later, but if you're in leveraging an Oracle Cloud solution, you do have an opportunity during those updates to opt in or opt out of any of the updated features. However, those do become required over time. So as much as we think we can pick and choose what we want to turn on, over time, those are going to be part of the tool. So again, specifically looking at the cloud apps community, the functional testing warrants attention, and that is because of quarterly updates. And if you are running an application, that for every quarterly update, that really means a project. And for Oracle customers, the project require you to test over and over again. So again, if you're not leveraging the right tools and you don't have the right things at your team's disposal, what you find is these projects and the testing that takes place is incredibly time consuming, and it's very much of a challenge. And we'll talk a little bit about that later, but again, you have very little choice. That update is going to happen whether you like it or not, and ultimately where within the quarter you do have some say where that update will happen, but within that 3 months, it is absolutely going to take place, and ultimately to ensure your tools are running properly, you need to make sure you're testing. And then, as we said, you have some control of what you're going to turn on for each update. That's really where we get into, specifics of what causes people issues during that testing process. So for every update, I think Oracle does a really good job of having some documents and having some information available to help educate you and your team on what the update will entail. And you can then make decisions based off your business processes on what you think would be the best fit. So just doing that, though, is incredibly difficult if you do not have a really strong record of what exactly your process and your the tools that you're using are. It's also, planning and managing those tests. That takes a significant amount of time for any team. And again, that if you do not have the right tools, that often requires, engineers and specific, system specialists. Creating those test scripts and then ultimately editing those, it takes a ton of time. And we always talk about the availability of, those specialist resources. So not only are they expensive, but when you're working in an organization and everybody has their hands full, it's tough to have, to ensure that your test engineers and your programmers are going to be available to help support that update project. And then, we really talk about the end user acceptance testing. So it's going from, each update, taking it from the project team required with, making sure everything is set up and working appropriately, and then ultimately getting it to the end users for them to do their acceptance testing. If you speak with anybody that's associated with this process, there's a good chance that they'll mention the documentation as one of the steps in the process that they probably dislike the most. So being able to do that, being able to record every step and properly document that, is one of those things that is much easier said than done. And then it's just the time and effort to, test and retest during those update projects, which is absolutely necessary and, a standard part of the process. So when we move forward and we start to look at, the value of test automation and what it can mean for, an organization, when we look at, test automation and what it looks like and feels like and brings from a strategy and to a project in terms of value, we really like to highlight 3 key areas. And the first area is repeatability. When you think of a strategy that addresses, your specific business requirements and the needs that you have as an IT organization, you really do need something that supports repeatability. You want to see the ways that you run your business and projects reflected in the tool. If you're able to use that tool consistently and easily, what you find is you're able to create much more of a reliable test methodology. The second is reducing the risk of these projects, and I think that's a good place just to pause for a second. We speak with a lot of folks in charge of running these business applications, and rarely do we ever hear anybody question the importance of it. And I think anytime you look at QA and testing, whether it's software, whether it's a bike, whatever it is, it's absolutely crucial whenever there's a change to ensure that your specific instance has not been affected. So for those that think that you can do some very light testing, you are leaving yourself susceptible to much bigger issues down the line. So I just kind of wanted to take a second and think about that for a second. But the other thing is, if you're managing hundreds or thousands of scripts and tests, improving the quality and reducing the risk of the project is an absolute game changer. within the 2-week window that Oracle gives you to run your update projects, if you're manually testing, it just naturally invokes a much higher rate of human error along the way. And the other thing is, within those 2 weeks, you really need to think about it as a week to understand, research and understand what that update is going to be, as well as about a week to test and implement any modifications, any changes to make sure that your environment hasn't been negatively affected. The last piece I will say is easing the burden on your team. Anytime when we talk about software or technology, we're always talking about ROI, and as important as that is, I think another piece that is really should be highlighted is enabling your team to do the best job possible, and the most efficient way that they can do it. And when we think about test automation, that's really what you're invoking here. As early on as we look to solve the testing problem, this was really one of the key factors in lightening the load, or as we say here, easing the burden on your team. Again, not only to do the best job possible, and when we're talking about testing and QA, that's essential, but it's also finding just a better, more efficient way to handle those projects. And ultimately, it does have a domino effect within the organization. From the people in charge of testing to the end user responsible for the acceptance testing, allowing the organization to really focus on that continuous innovation without slowing down or risking complications to your downstream systems. That's what it's really all about. And when you do not have, again, I would say the proper tools at the disposal of your team, you end up finding that these update projects are something that people, I would say the opposite of looking forward to. People are looking to avoid these at all costs. And I think when you do have the right tools, it certainly becomes easier on the palate for those that are responsible for doing it. So that brings us to something that you'll hear us talk about, and it's really allowing your team to deliver those smaller, faster, smarter projects. When you're using a tool like ours, what you're going to find is over time, as you continue to build it out, each project is going to be smaller modifications that you have to do. You're going to be able to complete your testing and your overall project faster, and ultimately because you're doing it in a smarter fashion. So whenever we talk about updates and goals, we really just want to find a way to deliver value to the business sooner than you have in the past. Many times we focus on the end customer, but this is also an opportunity that allows us to, highlight what a partner can do, or a systems integrator, really any customer or any partner that offers technical services for Oracle customers. When you're opening up testing and test automation, it does create an additional revenue stream for services that you can offer. And if it's something that you already do offer, again, the value that you're providing your team that is supporting your customer base with the update projects and the testing, you're going to allow them to do a much better job at a much faster pace. So that brings us to Dimension SwifTest, which is our testing solution. When we look at that, Dimension SwifTest really is, it's a platform and a framework that really allows you to effectively run and manage your testing process, excuse me. You know, with any update project, and when it comes to testing, you know, there's really three key areas that you're going to find yourself doing. You know, you're going to plan and prepare, as you've heard me talk about before. Then, you know, you're going to test and document those individual tests. And then once you've done that, you're going to make the fixes and modifications that you need. And then you're going to continually test until your team is sufficiently knowing that the tool is working as intended. And it does sound, I don't want to oversimplify it, because that process really takes a significant amount of time and effort from a team. But I do want to highlight, you know, that's exactly what you can do within Dimension SwifTest. You know, you're really enabling your team to spend less time actually running and modifying the test, and more time on, you know, fixing the bugs or the errors from the update, and ultimately, you know, putting your attention on bigger issues and bigger goals within your team. So I think this is a great graphic, because it really does tie together, you know, exactly what we offer, and all of the important bits and pieces that, you know, that are important to our customers within Dimension SwifTest. So before we jump into the demo, I do want to highlight a few areas that, you know, Dimension SwifTest and DWS is different from other vendors in the space, because these really are important features that, you know, that do kind of bubble up to the top of, you know, really creating tremendous value for the folks using it. So, you know, the first thing is SwifTest is application aware. And what does that mean? It means for Oracle Cloud Apps customers, whether you're leveraging ERP Cloud, HCM Cloud, Sales Cloud, Dimension SwifTest is going to be able to read what is on your screen. So regardless of the application that you're running, SwifTest is going to be able to manage and run those tests. You know, we've built the tool for business analysts and super users. So, you know, we talk about requiring the specialist resources. You know, and you know, at some point, if there is a very specific issue, you may need to still include those folks with the process. But ultimately, you know, running the tests and modifying the tests, it's built for business analysts and super users. So if you're comfortable within the application, there's no reason to think that you wouldn't be able to get comfortable within SwifTest. You know, for those folks, within the tool, you're able to replicate end-to-end business processes. And then, as we said before, you know, gold standard documentation. The documentation within SwifTest automatically, you know, for every step of the test, it automatically produces a PDF, which is going to be able to share, you know, exactly what happens, the results, and some additional information. And again, you'll be able to see that here when we have the demo here in a few minutes. No developer or studio required. You know, we do have a dynamic data store that really helps create a tremendous amount of efficiency when you're changing those tests, or you're making modifications that would happen with many tests. And then as a company, as an organization, we are ISO 27001 accredited, which is, you know, when we think about technology, I think security is one of the top factors in everybody's mind when we think about, you know, what would be a good fit for our organization. So, but I think that's a good spot to stop, and I am actually going to hand off the mic to Dennis Chashenko, who is our technical project manager, and he's going to be taking us through a demo of the software where we're going to be able to show many of the items that I've discussed up to this point. Dennis, can you share your screen?
Yeah, sure. Just a moment.
Not a problem.
Show my screen. Can you see it now?
We can, yeah.
Okay, cool. So my name is Dennis. As Tyler said, I'm a technical project manager here at DWS. And normally what I do as part of my job, when we deliver any project and even before we deliver it, we create our own in-house tests just to be able to test whatever we do and be able to replicate it later. And it's very useful for regression testing when we add some more features, for example, because we're doing some developers projects, but also I help customers, even who have nothing to do with any kind of development, to create their own tests and to maintain the database of tests and so on. So SwifTest itself, this is how it looks like. It's actually a Windows application that you just install on your computer. The only requirement for you is that you should be able to access your Oracle Cloud Apps environment from your browser, and we just interact with the browser. That's all. We don't interact with anything else. So everything SwifTest knows comes from the browser. We need the URL. We need to be able to log in into the Cloud Apps environment, and then we can record any action that you would do normally as a user. So in SwifTest, we have projects. So this is like the first level. Depending on the customer, the project can be anything you wish. The project can be a module that you're going to test. So like accounts payable, accounts receivable, whatnot. It can be a real project like new warehouse in Germany, for example, and a new branch plant in the Netherlands, whatnot. Or it can be really whatever you want. So basically, this is just the first level. Then the second level is scenarios. And then inside the scenarios, again, it really depends on what you use the testing software for. It can be sales order lifecycle, purchase order lifecycle, and it can be other things. It's just the second level. And then the third level, and this is actually the tests. So here, I've got nothing yet here. So what I'll show you is how to actually create a test. So to create a test, we need to record all those steps here from this software. You're not supposed to be able to do any, you're not supposed to be a programmer. So to use this tool, you're supposed to know what you're doing in Oracle Cloud Apps. And that's all. There are some techie stuff in the application, but you don't really have to use it if you don't need to. So you just need to know what you're really doing in Oracle Cloud Apps. The first step is always to log in. So this is how it looks like. You just press create button. Yeah, what's that? Sorry, sales order. Yeah, so this is going to be our test. I'll just name it sales order entry. Same description. I won't populate the type. And now the test itself. So we add the first action. And well, the first action is always login. So we press login. When I actually record those tests for myself, I usually use two screens. One screen has SwifTest, this application, and the other will have the browser. And well, it looks really good because just you have lots of space. But here in the presentation, I can only share one of my screens. So I'll just split the screen in two. Half of the screen will be the browser, which is about to open, and the other half will be SwifTest. Yeah, so I'll just do it like this. yeah, so normally I just have two screens for that. So we signed in. I don't really do anything here, but this is the live system actually. So if you need to, you can absolutely click on any button. You can do whatever you want. But if you would like to keep recording the script, you're supposed to come back to the previous point. So all the steps that you're recording them from SwifTest. We are not recording your clicks in the system, unfortunately. So the next step, well, if we are, yeah. So there are some generic steps there here. There are some technical steps that have to do with the database, with the data store. They're all here. We don't really need to know them now. And what we need to do, we need to use the actions from application and sometimes navigator. We won't go through any action because it's a short demo, but even if it is not a demo but a workshop, we don't go through each action either. We just need to know that whatever you can do here as a user, click on a button, enter any type of information, you can find an action for this here. If you would like to go to a grid, enter some value into a grid, click on some grid cell, just find an action for it. There are not so many actions, it's not going to be very difficult. So I'm going to click on order management, but from SwifTest. So for this, I'll just use the action click form control. So what it does now, it reads all the form controls from the web page. So that's why there is a small pause there. Now I just need to find this order management. I can either just scroll and find it, or I can start typing order management. So yeah, you can just select this one. SwifTest highlights this one because sometimes there are a few buttons that are named the same, and by highlighting it just helps us choose the right one. Now I press execute. SwifTest, click on that. Then I want to click on another order management on this guy. So click form control. A little wait for read all the controls from the web page and order management. As you can see, there are two of those, but we highlight which one we are actually going to use. So in this case, we are clicking on this one, press execute. SwifTest clicks on that one. Yeah, now I would like to click on this button, create order. And so it's exactly the same action. Click form control. Probably this is the actions that you're going to be using most of all. You just click some form controls. And now we need to find this create order, press execute. So if you know what you do, and typically you do, it's really fast. It's not much slower comparing to what you would be doing if you were doing here in the live system. More or less the same. So sometimes you do need to look for an action, but more often than not, you don't. Now I'd like to enter the customer name. We can search for the customer, or we can enter a customer if we know it. So that's another action. And we'll use set form control value. Again, reading all of them. Now it should be named customer. And make sure, yeah, this is the right one. And I just know this one. Yeah, now we just need to select this guy from the combo box. So that's another action, set form combo box value. And we choose this customer combo box and we use the value. That's the only value there. Right, now we need to enter some item here into the select item just to add it to the order. So that's again set form control value. And here, when we record the test, we usually do what you would do as a user. So if you are supposed to actually go and search for some customer, be sure to click on this guy, go to the search box, and do whatever you would do if you were actually testing it manually. Yeah. So yeah, let me just select an item. So form control, and I need item number, I guess. I think it's this one. And I just happen to know this guy. Yeah. So here, as a user, I would just click tab, or maybe I would just click on one of these guys. So if I want to click on one of those, I would use again set form combo box value, but just for a change, let's click the tab, because as a user I do it quite often. So let me find this item number, and I say, can I please click tab? And SwifTest clicks tab. Also, as I do that, it actually records all those steps. If I press back, you can see that it has recorded everything I did here, and it is repeatable. You can repeat whatever you did before, but because we haven't finished yet, I'm not going to start it over. If, for example, you made some mistake and you want to get back to the previous step, you can always just execute the test up to this action, for example, and just get back to the previous step and redo this step number 8 if it was wrong. I'll just keep doing that. Now I'll just select the first row, this one, select grid row, and I'll select the first, and I click this OK, but from SwifTest, click form control, and I'll click OK, execute. Now, all right, because it's half screen, I don't see this button, but this is this button that I need to press, this add button. So again, click form control. Wait for it to read the controls, add. Let me see whether it's highlighted. It is highlighted. We don't have to check it every time, but still it's a good idea. Right, so it got added. And now save and submit. So save. All those pauses, all those things that you see, it's basically we're waiting on Oracle Cloud Apps. Sometimes when we read data from the screen, we wait on SwifTest to read it, but it's usually just takes a little bit of time. And now let's press submit. Submit. Submit order to fulfillment. So there we go. We created this order. We can also read this number if we can use it later in some other processes. For example, if you want to ship it or do anything else with that. We are not doing it now. We will just click OK. And click done, I guess. Click form control. Done. And that's basically it. So this is as simple as it gets if we want to hard code anything. So as you see, I actually hard coded this Sykes gym. I hard coded the item that I wanted to use, and I just used one item. So it's very simple, but it's now repeatable because we've got this test now. And if you need to create another purchase order, oh, sorry, in this case, sales order, we can create it again and again and again as many times as we wish. So to do that, you can just go to this test and press execute test, execute, and a new purchase order with sales order with the same well, exactly the same, just a different number will get created. And let's just see that. I actually like this process. Yeah, when you do create all those, I'll just move it there. When you create all those sales orders, purchase orders, when you create the test, it's a good idea after you have created it just to run it again to see that it works as designed. Because sometimes, as I said, you can click away, or maybe it's not repeatable, or maybe some action didn't get saved, not because of technical issues. Sometimes there is an error, so you selected some action, Cloud Apps returned you an error, and that's why it didn't get recorded. Yeah, and you just missed that or something like this. And in any case, it's a good idea just to do it again. So now it got created automatically without any, I just pressed this execute, and now we have another order, exactly the same, but with a different number. So obviously SwifTest is more flexible than that. We don't have to hard code anything, and there is a possibility to soft code it. And to do that, we have so-called repository data store. And the repository data store is basically like your table, or you can think of it as your Excel sheet, where you can just put some data that you don't want to be part of the test itself. Well, it will be part of the test, but it will be it's easily changeable, but by anyone, by your consultant, for example. So your test will depend on that. So for example, it's also very simple. So you can basically create it in a couple of clicks. So for example, demo 26 January 2022. Then here you design the structure. So let's say we'll have a customer. We want to soft code it, and we have the item number that we're gonna soft code. Save. Didn't need to do that, and save. So that's just the structure. Now you can actually populate it by press edit data, and then let's say that, well, let's use a different customer. Gym Fitness Gym, for example. Let's use the same customer. Sorry, the same item number. Yeah. So let's say that we don't want to put those data, those values into the test per se, but we want the test to be flexible about that. So we want them to use this. So to do that, we need to modify the test a little bit, of course, but then it will be more flexible. So let me just copy this guy. What I can do, I can press on it. Here I just press copy. Sales order copy, and this says soft code it. An exact copy will be, I can actually modify the original test. I just want to leave it as is, just in case, because depending on what you really need, those quick hard-coded tests can make sense. You can create a lot of them. If you want to load test your system, for example, maybe you don't want any variety, but if you want to properly test it, maybe you do want a lot of variety, and in this case, soft coding makes sense. And here we need to change a bit of things. So we'll execute it up to step number 4. And let me press execute. After step number 4, we started hard coding some values. So I would like to override it with something from the data store. And this bit is a little bit techy, but if you think of yourself, well, it's not for techie as a programmer techie, it's techie as a consultant techie. A consultant should be able to use Excel worksheets anyways, and this is kind of similar to that. You just need to add some things to that. So yeah, we already pressed create order. Now this action, we hard coded our supplier. We don't need to do that anymore. So instead of this one, we'll add an action to read the data from the repository. It's like reading some data from your Excel sheet. Let me just find, and this is the data store group of actions, and it was, I guess, what it was called demo, and I read this one. Nothing happens in Cloud Apps per se. And now instead of this action where we hard coded something, we can actually change this action. Let's give it a wait. So instead of using a specific value like it did, a specific value basically means hard coding. We use a dynamic value, and we use this customer that actually that comes from the data store. So we just map, we just do this mapping, which press save. Now, so now if I just execute just one action, it basically should put this customer that I put into the data store into this field. Let me just execute just one action. Yeah. Now, yeah, we probably need to re-record this one. We'll just add after selected and load. We need to set form combo box value, customer, this one. Yeah, and kind of the same. What we need to do the same with the item. So let me just go there. Where's our item? Yeah, this guy. So instead of entering this one, well, I actually entered exactly the same value into the data store, but still I want to make sure that our test is flexible enough. So I'll just use a dynamic value, so the value from the repository, and I'll use our item number from the repository this time, not so the test doesn't really depend on that. And I think from this point, we can basically just carry on to the very end. Execute actions. So this is how I changed the test. So we had a test where everything was hard-coded, and I quickly changed it to something where the supplier and the item are not hard-coded. So now, obviously, you can make it even more complicated. You can create, as opposed to having just one line in the repository, you can add any number of lines, and maybe you want to have, well, most probably you want to have a multi-line sales order. So, but the test needs to depend on that, and we need to know it from the very beginning. Yeah, so basically this is how it looks like. Also, aside from what I'm showing now, we've got all kind of reporting, of course. So yeah, first of all, you've already seen the repository data stores. The repository data stores are your Excel sheets. Everything that needs to be soft coded goes there. Now we've got queues. If you've got lots of tests, you might want to create a queue and execute, like you create 500 tests and you want them to be executed all together. So you create a queue, you add all those 500 tests to a queue, and you execute them all together. They can be interconnected. For example, you create a sales order, then you ship it, then they are interconnected, obviously. Yeah, or they can be just independent. Now we have a schedules here, and schedules, basically what you do, you create a scheduler and you say that you would like some queue to be executed, for example, one time at some point at night, wherever. Or we would like it to be executed every 17 hours and 53 minutes. I don't know why it's the default now, to be honest. But you can select like every 5 minutes or every day or every 5 hours. So, or it can be executed daily at some point or weekly. Yeah, so that's our schedule. Also, what we've got here, we've got a dashboard where you can see all your projects, and you can see, well, it shows many details, which users executed which tests failed, which tests were successful, and there are actions. So for example, if a test fails, you can basically say that this test, it failed, someone needs to investigate this, so you assign a person who's going to investigate that. And also a very important part of that is that, for example, I ran this test as execute test a while ago. So what we can do, SwifTest creates a documentation for you, which can be used as part of your documentation. Let me select it, press print. Now I go to reporting. So this part actually, is it this one? No, let me just press refresh. You can send it to yourself as an email, or you can just say print to file, and it will get here. And this part can be used and is actually used by many customers as part of the testing documentation, for example. So it tells you that this test was sales order. It was run at this time, when it was started, when it ended, how long it took to be executed, and it shows you every step by step. So we logged in. This is your, and it also saves you screenshots from every step. Click order management. This is how it looked like. Then we clicked form control order management. This is how it looked like, and so on. So it shows you every step. It shows you all the action details from kind of technical point of view, and it also shows you screenshots so that you can see what actually happened. And this is your PDF from the beginning to the end. And I think that's all I wanted to show. I'll just give the microphone back to Tyler, and if there are any questions, Tyler or me, we can answer them.
Dennis, thank you so much. That was amazing. Really appreciate you you showing that. And just want to share my screen real quick. Can everybody see? Dennis, can you see my screen?
Not yet, actually.
Okay, so see if we can share here. Okay, there we go. Should be able to see it now.
Yep, we can see your screen.
Thank you, Dennis. So again, I just want to take a quick look at, Dennis did a great job showing us the tool, but want to take a quick look at, what that can do for you and what our customers and the folks using SwifTest are seeing. People are saving 60% of the time just on test execution, and then even more substantially, they're saving 70% on the time it takes to actually create and maintain those tests. From there, I did want to take a look at our customers. Dennis, help me. I'm seeing a black screen. Are you also seeing that?
Yeah.
So it looks like we're having some. Okay, so there it is.
Yeah.
But these are just a few of the folks that we have leveraging SwifTest to run their update projects and other change event testing. But yeah, I think we have a couple of minutes left, so I would love to open it up for questions if we have any. And below is my email address if anybody wants to reach out and they have any questions or any thoughts they want to discuss, please reach out. We're always happy. But Rachel, do we have any questions in the chat box?
Thanks, Tyler. Yeah, we've got a couple of questions come in. What platform is SwifTest being run on? And sort of accompanying question, how long generally would it take users to get up and running?
So, Dennis, do you want to talk a little bit about the the platform, and then I can go through what it typically looks like from getting up and running?
Yeah, from the platform point of view, it depends really what you mean. We only support the client side, the one that you just saw, that I use to create tests and which actually runs tests and which can run your schedules, for example. It's Windows only, so we don't support, for example, Mac or other systems or mobile. But the server side is run here at DWS on Microsoft, in Microsoft Cloud, Microsoft Azure Cloud. Yeah.
Yeah, and from a getting up and started point of view, we really see teams getting going anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks. We offer learning resources and education online in on a basically an internet, being able to access that education at any time that you want. So depending on the process that you have in place for your team, you should expect to be able to get up and running with SwifTest anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks. So it does look like we just hit 1 o'clock though. So if we don't have any more questions, again, please do Rachel, are there any more questions?
We did have one. I wonder if we can just cover it quickly, because I know it may come up in a few people's minds, just about the library of scripts. Is there a library of scripts already, or is it just that users need to create them from scratch? So maybe if you could just cover that very quickly, that probably would.
Dennis, do you want to touch on that?
For Oracle Cloud Apps, unfortunately, we don't have any library at the moment. We have a library for JD Edwards, but not for Cloud Apps. And also, we just noticed that it's so different for every customer because they all have different interfaces. So I'm not even sure how useful it might be. It can prove useful. Actually, like for JD Edwards, we have this library, but it is being used by customers only as an example how to create scripts, how to create a loop, for example. So we have a repository. We have a repository with like sales order header, sales order details, and then the test actually enters sales order and just runs through this repository. And this is just usually being used as an example and not as a basis for your own script. So it's still useful, and we'll probably create something like this for cloud apps in the future. But at the moment, unfortunately, we don't have anything like that.
Yeah, and in addition, Dennis, I think was spot on. For cloud apps, everybody's instances are specific to their business processes that we have found it more efficient and better practice to build those up to reflect exactly what you would be doing within your own instance of Oracle Cloud. So do we have additional questions, Rachel, or?
No, I think we're done. We're good. Thanks.
Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us. Dennis, want to thank Dennis and Rachel from DWS. And as I mentioned before, we're always happy to discuss this stuff. So please reach out with any thoughts and questions that you have, and we're happy to help. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.